So it's back on the years. I don't remember when we were lunch.
Should I move it over to be
And if you have questions and you don't want to be heard, you want to just give it to me privately, text it to me or write it down and give it to me. We've allocated about, I don't know, an hour and a half for this. Last year, it took a little bit longer. We actually had to stop, so that's why we gave a little bit of cushion for time. So the floor is open. Before we start with questions, they're each going to tell a little bit about themselves, give a little bit of backdrop to the story, so you know where they've come from, and then we'll open it up to questions. So here we go. We'll start with Michele.
Well, thank you. Honestly, never thought I'd be here, and it's because of what he brought into the marriage with the sexual addiction that we are. I had no idea. He had cheated on his first wife. I don't know if anybody knew that, but I thought I asked all the right questions, thought I was that special one that brought something different, the real soulmate. But for 16 years, I had no idea. Something wasn't right, but I could have never put my finger on it. He swore he never would cheat on me. So after 16 years, the D-Day, and here we are, 6 years later, and we have a better marriage than I could have ever dreamed of. So with a lot of hard work, a lot of pain, but a lot of love and a lot of strength from him helping me heal and me doing my own recovery work, and with him going very deep in his own, and together, I have my recovery, he has his recovery, and together we have our recovery. And we're here, and I'm so glad to see every one of you. You are giving hope to life, to families, to futures. So thank you, and I thank my husband for just having it in him to want to do this, to want to reach out, and to have a new heart that I just love and seeing him, and just am so proud of him.
Amen.
And I'm proud to watch you guys too. So it's been fun to watch you guys journey through this process. So my name is Melody Lovvorn, and I am originally from Florida, but went to college in Birmingham, Alabama, and met my husband there. And we were married for about 8 years before his sexual addiction kind of blew up our family, and were separated for about 6 months and came back together and had more indiscretions. And so we divorced for about 6 years. We had 4 kids. When everything kind of blew up, our kids were 6'4", 2 and 6 months old. So I can totally identify with where any of you guys are. We always say there's never a convenient time when the story comes out. It can happen during pregnancy. It can happen, when the kids are all different ages. And so we were divorced. Ultimately, we had to divorce for about 6 years and made our way back to each other. And I love how Michele said that recovery is, my recovery, his recovery, and our recovery. And after our divorce, I never thought that reconciliation would be a part of our story, since I had already gone through that twice with my husband. But we both were on a path and did not know that initially or inevitably our paths would cross. And so we remarried in 2008, and in 2010 started a ministry together called Undone Redone, and have walked that path for almost 12 years. And unfortunately, about the last year and a half, we are back on a path where addiction has come in and created a lot of chaos and confusion. And so I am stepping through another divorce. And, I think what's really, really important is that we continue to remember we're all on a path, and that it's a growth path until either Jesus takes us home or he comes back. And that doesn't change for any of us, whether I'm walking with a woman or I'm walking with a couple. And so I just think that that's the real important piece here, is that God loves us enough for us to continue to learn and grow. And that's why I love people like Michele and Tom, where we can collaborate with other ministries and other things. And so did not expect this to be part of my story now, but it is. And I'm going to continue learning and growing and walking with betrayed spouses and continuing collaborating with amazing ministries like this. So thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Trudy Kaufman. I'm Brian's wife. So this is all new to me. And so Brian and I will be celebrating 6 years on Monday. It's our anniversary. So that's exciting. It's kind of funny because, he's here at a men's conference and I'm doing this. I came down to visit Michele, so we have our own separate anniversary time together. But anyway, so our starts back about 5 years. Brian came to me and told me he came to me and told me that he was struggling with pornography and sexual addiction. It was surprising to me because I didn't know, because I had been previously married to an alcoholic, and so I had gone through Celebrate Recovery, and I had worked on myself so much that I had asked all the questions. I thought I knew everything with what to look for before I got remarried, and so when he told me, my first instinct was, well, then you better go do something because I'm not helping you with it, because codependency me was not going to be there to hold his hand through it. So he started with a Fight for Freedom group and has just flourished with that, bringing it to our church. I work within the church. That was kind of hard for me when he also told me about things, but working within the church, we've started with the Fight for Freedom, and I've worked with women through the Celebrate Recovery for the last, it was 8 years at that point, and my heart goes for the women. So right away, it was always women that I was always helping. Brian has now helped me to, bring a heart for you guys and understanding what you guys go through, because I just only knew my own hurt when I was going through my watching the addiction. So I didn't know the hurt that he was going through with his addiction. So it's been very informative, and we've been, we're kind of trying to get some ideas and what they're working with. And I love to work with couples and the women and just helping them go through it, because, I understand, we pray for you men all the time, but I also see their hurts when they, come into the class, and when they call me, with something that they are finding out, something else they're finding out new, or something. It can be something old, but to them it's all brand new, and it's just reopening another wound. So it's nice to be here, and also I'd love to hear what Brian comes home with and tells me about, working with men. So.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you guys communicated to your wives that this is on YouTube or Facebook. If you haven't, like Eric said, they can go to the YouTube channel, Come to the Table Ministry channel, YouTube channel. You get it right. But yeah, you can get the link if you need it. They can still get on. It's not too late, or it will be out there on
It's on
YouTube.
your website too, right?
No, the YouTube channel is. You have to click another click to go to the YouTube channel from the website. So 2 different links. It's also on Facebook, but
It's right there.
it's right there.
Right there.
Click
Watch
that right there.
That right there.
All right, so we can open it up for questions, and you can address it to one specifically. You can have all 3 answer. It's totally up to you. They'll pass the mics around so that it's better heard on the recording. First one, Tony.
Y'all met my wife Cindy last month. It doesn't seem like it, but I'm rejoicing inside right now. But I've also got a heavy heart. And I called her during the break, and she asked what was wrong. And I said I have a heavy heart. She apologized to me. She said, I'm sorry. That lady has nothing to be sorry about. How do I help her not enable me in that way?
What was the?
How does he help not enable, so she's not enabling him?
Well, I want to speak to that on a couple levels, because we love you guys, and there's something beautiful about recovery, that we all have pain. And, the wife's pain doesn't trump your pain, and your pain doesn't trump her pain. And when y'all can, and it does take her a while before she can step into your pain with you, right? Because some of her pain is because of you. However, when the work continues to happen, there can be some beautiful things about her stepping into the places where she truly sees you. She truly sees that wounded little boy inside of you, and she wants to come toward that. And that doesn't necessarily mean when she was crying on the phone today, she was enabling you, or that was from a place of codependency. That could have been from a real place of love, that you're here with all these men and they see you and they love you and they're coming toward you. So there will be times where maybe she is trying to fix you, change you. There may be times where your pain shows up and she's not at a place where she can see it or receive it. And then there'll be times maybe today that she may be full of love and peace, knowing that you're in this room with all these men learning and growing, and that those tears that came out on the phone today may have been just her heart rejoicing that you have a group like this. So,
yeah, and I just see, for her to be able to cry with you, that takes vulnerability on both your parts, and that takes courage. So when you cry together, there's, like Melody said, there's so much room for growth, where you need to get under her and she gets under you, and together you hold each other up and you walk through this journey together. There's power in that. And be so grateful and continue to pray that she's able to cry with you, that she's not pulling away. Those tears are, like Melody said, her joy of closeness, of she doesn't want you to hurt. She just wants you to heal. So those are tears of joy for both of you.
I need her to heal more than me.
Then you can help her. And all these guys are here to help you do that too. To help you heal, and to help her heal, and to help the couple heal. You just use everybody. Use everybody here. Get everybody's number. That's why God brought you here.
I was just gonna say to keep on healing with these guys, because that's where your healing is. Because if she can heal only while you heal. That's what brings her healing, is watching you heal, and that's probably where the tears definitely came from, is from knowing that you're here with all these guys and the healing that you're getting. And so that's the love. There's a difference between love and enabling. Is enabling is helping to hide what's going on. Healing is walking through it with you. So.
Hi. Yeah, my wife was also at the women's retreat last month, and she showed up a little early to help do some setup things, and I was texting her, and when she got there, she said, "I'm here," and I said, "I'm sorry you have to be." And she said, and it just floored me when she said that. She responded saying, "Don't be. I get to be with some amazing women this weekend." And I never would have seen that coming, but it really just kind of broke me. So that being said, thank you ladies for pouring into our wives, mine especially. I do have a question about helping in the work environment. I work in an office with several other women, and one thing that's still very triggering for her is just her still feeling safe with my interactions with other women at my office. Any suggestions on how I can help her feel safe?
Yeah, sometimes when y'all ask these questions, I'm going to probably jump around a little bit, but I think I know where I'm headed. Safety, obviously, we understand how so very important that is. And I want to say this to all of you guys. Honesty, although it may be hurtful sometimes for a woman, is safety. So I want that to sink in. Honesty is always going to provide safety. And so what that looks like, when I was married to Trey the first time and we were kind of fumbling through recovery, when he would come home, it was almost like when I'd say, "How was work today?" or "How'd things go?" And it was always, "Fine, fine." That's almost like a red flag for us sometimes, because we know it's not always fine, right? It's not always fine for us. But when he would come home and say, the girl across the cubicle from me had a low-cut blouse on, and, you know, I found myself having to make sure that I looked away from that. That provided safety for me. You know why? Because he was telling me the truth. And like, it was just the day in, or I was in a Starbucks line and the woman in front of me had super tight yoga pants on. I wasn't freaked out by that he couldn't control that was happening, you know, but just to let me in on the day in, day out. I don't want to say opportunities, I guess it would be more like temptations possibly, or just experiences that were out there in front of him. It would create a calmness in me to just know he was telling me the truth, you know, and I had to look away, you know, before I gave my coffee order. But it was almost more like when everything's always fine. And maybe you can even speak to that. I was in the Starbucks line and there was a girl in front of me in yoga pants and they were really tight, and I found myself having to look around. I want to let you know that, Michele, because I really want you to be my only one. You know, maybe you affirm maybe after that, but we can always step into honesty, even if it does create some tension for us. That's our work to do, that tension that's created. But it's when everything is fine or good or great, you know, that ongoing, we just know that that's not true, right? We live in a fallen world. So we're going to have things that we want to share with our spouses, triggers, things like that. We want to be honest, and we want y'all to be as honest. And I just feel like, I know that's a tension for you guys of like, oh crap, I don't want her to get triggered, or oh crud, I don't want her to get whatever. But just maybe you share that and just say, and I'm here and I'm safe and I'm for you and I'm with you. Something like that. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I could piggyback off of that, even if, be proactive. Like make sure she knows all your passwords for your computers, you know, and she can see everything if she wants to. And if if you got an email or something like that, or a text from another woman, if that's, you know, don't do the smiley faces and all, keep it all business. And if you get those things, you know, emails or something like that, tell her, you know, be truthful, be honest, be proactive. If you're going to have a meeting, like even with Tom during the Zoom, the COVID and Zoom, when we were Zooming, and all of a sudden a woman's face, or voice, I heard it immediately. My heart skipped a beat. And from then on, we learned, okay, if he's in a meeting and I'm going to be able to hear it, he's going to tell me there's a meeting, there's a woman that's going to be there. That way, I didn't get scared. It didn't just take me there. It didn't take my breath away. So if you can help her be aware and in advance, okay? And don't, you know, you can ask your companies not to go to networking hours. Be proactive, protect her, do everything you can to protect her. You know, your job, you can get another job, but you can't replace her.
I don't have anything more to say to that.
I guess my question is that like some of us have more safe lives than others, and some that are willing to participate in recovery and others that aren't. So how do you, how does a guy navigate through that? You know, because you don't want to throw stuff out if your wife's not involved in recovery. No matter what you do, she's not going to feel safe. So I guess she needs to be in recovery, I guess. But I guess that's, you know, there are probably a lot of guys here that are struggling with that. I have a pretty safe wife that I could share things with and share with the group. But it's kind of a question.
I think I know. Okay, go on.
So you're saying if, you know, their wife isn't in recovery, how are they going to work on their own recovery?
How can they begin to work on that safety while they're not?
I think he's saying, what's the
Basically,
level
how
of
does he maneuver
disclosure
through
that you
this?
agree
She's not in
upon?
recovery.
If she's not in
Yeah, I
recovery.
mean, some couples may not be like Melody and where they can disclose all that and be confident.
Right.
Some may want a different level of disclosure on a day-to-day basis. in their recovery.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's all part of, you know, talking to communication is a big deal, no matter how far you're in recovery or who's in recovery. I mean, I wasn't in I was in my own recovery but didn't go into recovery with Brian when he went into it with the men. So I was even at that point where I didn't want to hear anything at first, because I just wanted him to work on things, because I didn't want to be a part of it. So I think that I just wanted to see him to even have proof that he was going to even work on it. Because I had seen 10 years prior to somebody else not working on anything. So I didn't want to even put my heart into it before I would see him work on it. So sometimes, just keep on working on yourself to help to bring that, usually sometimes it brings them around to start realizing. I mean, I have some women that their husbands had been working on it for a couple of years before they actually just realized that maybe they needed to get recovery themselves. So it's just, they want to see you guys working on it too before they're going to start doing it. So I don't know if that helps.
No, that's exactly right. I didn't expect Tom to continue working on it. I didn't expect him to pick me and to do the work he needed to do. And so he was told too by a friend of ours, and he said, keep doing the next right thing. So it took me a year till I actually did the Betrayal and Beyond and picked it up. I had the book, but I did not want to look at myself. I didn't think I had to look at myself, and I didn't trust him to even try and to continue and be consistent. So you keep doing the next right thing every day.
Yeah, I would say pretty much primarily what the two of them said. One thing that I could see being a tension for you is, probably the most important person in the world to you is her, and you want that approval from her, and you're not going to get that probably for a while, and that's going to create a tension. But again, every tension is also a place of growth. So I do think whether she says that she's watching your recovery or not, she's watching your recovery. She's observing. And my hope would be at some point she would be open to stepping into that. Now, I do know there's some things still at nighttime. I don't know if y'all do any kind of check-in or anything like that. Obviously, it would not kind of be a check-in since she's not doing recovery, but it could be an opportunity like the Thanos or some of those things where maybe you just say, where maybe you step in, maybe you're leading emotional intimacy areas of your marriage right now, where you just kind of step in and say, hey, this is where I am, or hey, I'm struggling with the fact that we don't have a lot of money in the bank, or whatever that looks like, but you're kind of leading with that. And again, I really believe that will create some safety and security from her, and it could be she's just got her heels dug in right now and doesn't want to step into recovery. But that, kind of like Michele said, over time, the hope would be that she'll step into a place, because what will happen is you're going to begin to grow and she's going to kind of be left behind. And, hopefully if you have opportunities to get her around other couples like Michele and Tom, that she'll feel that. I mean, when you're around another couple that's doing the work, you're like, wow, I don't want what she has, but I want what she has, right? So hopefully that will be, a place that she steps into.
What are ways we can feel our wife's pain?
I think empathy work that's a great question. Empathy work is a beautiful place. I remember in 2015 when I wrote Life Beyond Betrayal, and my husband edited all of the audios, all of the homework, all the worksheets, like everything to do with the course that put out. The empathy that I saw happen just from him editing all that was beautiful work. So, I mean, if you want some brownie points, I mean, we could definitely give you some of those. But like, if you read like some books, Intimate Deception is a great book by Dr. Sherry Keffer. I'm trying to just think of some really, really good books. Sexually Addicted Spouse is a good one. I love what Dr. Sherry Keffer puts in there, because she really brings in a lot of the empathy work. And so if you went out and you read a book like that and you started talking to your wife about that, like, I can't tell you what that would do to her heart. Like, she would feel so seen and so known and so loved by you, and hopefully the longer that she does this, she'll be reading books too. Like, I love Unwanted, I love Surfing for God, there's so many great books that really, if y'all to step into each other's work a little bit. There's just great, rich conversations that can be had, but that's a great question.
Yeah.
Dr. Sherry Keffer wrote Intimate Deception. Dr. Barbara Steffens wrote My Sexually Addicted Spouse.
And helping her heal by Carol Jorgensen Sheets. Yeah, helping her heal.
Yeah, helping her heal. Or help her heal. And but even with I don't know if you've done a disclosure yet, but even an emotional impact letter, if she would write one and she would be able to read that to you, that's very, very impactful. And it's better to read with someone else, another couple or something like that. But just because she can write down her losses of whether it's career, family, friends, her health, sexuality, spirituality, and she breaks those down where you can hear her in a different place where she has time to actually write it down instead of just sit there and kind of like stumble on her words and then she's thinking of something else and the pain comes in. But if she actually has the time to write that down. Also, Dr. Doug Weiss, he has a great DVD, Helping Her Heal, so those are some other things.
Rich, can you talk about, so when we bring our addiction into our marriage, that's one thing. But then when our spouse has been abused as a child, domestic violence, so they have a whole nother layer of trauma that we may not even know about. So as we get in a group, we want to help our wives, right? As the guy says, hey, you should go beat your own younger. Well, they don't want to do that because we're telling them to do that. But we don't know the other layer of the trauma that they've experienced. So in leading groups for 25 years, I have so many guys that get frustrated. Well, my wife's not doing this as fast as I'm doing. Well, they don't realize the trauma that they've had in the past. And then you put them together that they may never heal at the same rate. I don't know if you could just speak to that and what the guys can do to kind of help their wives in that, because they may never be on the same page again.
Can you rephrase the question? Can you kind of repeat what he said because they couldn't hear?
That basically
what he's saying is that many times the trauma that might be experienced, I'm paraphrasing what you said, the trauma that might be experienced within the marriage, okay, she's experienced betrayal trauma due to what y'all have done, but she might have, actually that would be her secondary trauma. Her primary trauma was probably sexual abuse, sexual assault, some form of sexual brokenness before this. So she's going to have multi-layer, multi-fracture trauma. And so his question was, how does a man try to help his wife when she's got both of those? And they're probably triggering each other at the same time. But what we get many times is men that are kind of saying, well, how do I help her with that? Or she's not growing at the pace that I would like her to. And remember, all of these places of tension are places of growth, right? So I remember many times along my path being frustrated that maybe my spouse wasn't where, I wanted him to be, and vice versa. I was kind of like Michelle. I was kicking and screaming. I was like, this is your deal. You need to go get fixed. I'm awesome. You need to go get fixed. And then all of a sudden he started doing the work, and I kind of went to an intensive. I went to Bethesda, and I'm going to be really vulnerable here, but my counselor, I wasn't going to do anything that he said, right? Because I don't trust him. So I went to a counselor, and she told me to go to Bethesda in Nashville, Tennessee. I kind of went kicking and screaming, but I went, and sure enough, Friday night I get there. No, I guess it was Thursday, because it was Thursday through Sunday, and I don't know how many of y'all know Marty Furry, who wrote No Stones and all that, but she stands up and starts sharing her story, and she's a sex addict. And I mean, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I was like, well, I won't say all the things that I said, but I was like, she represented all my pain, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, my husband just probably found another female sex addict, and they were, but I'm telling you what, y'all, I fell in love with her over the weekend, because pain is pain. And so your wife who may have primary or secondary trauma, it's still pain, right? And we want to help her get to that place, just like we want to see you guys get to that place. And so at the end of the day, I could look at Marnie Free and see that the behaviors that came out of her life was because of trauma in her life. Same thing with us. If we do not do the work to heal, those wounds are going to come out sideways. And so I would just say, like, this is such a journey. And we're, like I said, we're all going to be growing until Jesus takes us home, right? So, like, we know this is not a sprint. We know this is a marathon. So, and we know we're, all in the midst of a bunch of mess and mud and crap and all the things. So just roll up your sleeves and get ready to just do the work. You're going to be working on yourself, or you're going to be helping your wife with empathy and her work, or you're going to be working with your kids because they're going to have their own brokenness. So it literally is like, let's sign up to do the work. And so, yes, there's going to be times where you're frustrated, or maybe she's been triggered for 2 years and you're like, if I get one more trigger, I'm going to die. I totally get that. But just remember the work. I mean, nobody's faking pain, right? So pain is pain is pain. And so I think if you could just remember, we all grow at a different pace, and we all arrive at a destination at a different time. And so I don't know if that helps or not, but just maybe continue to push her and encourage her toward other women that can love her well as well. Because there are going to be times you're going to be fatigued, and I want to validate that. So.
That was a really long answer. That was really good.
I was just gonna say, just, walking through the pain with her is a big thing, but just realizing that the triggers that you are doing also trigger that back pain, because I just from the women that have come to me with things, usually we all have something from our past, so not only are you men dealing with stuff from your past, but the women, it triggers things from their past. And I mean, when I went through the book, I didn't even remember some of mine. I was like, there were things that I was like, check, and I was like, man, I didn't even realize some of the things that I was going through, and why it, I think it helped me realize how I became who I am. So it's not unusual for them to go through it. And like she said, have her coming around other women, or having the wives coming around other women is a big way for their healing too.
Right.
So we're all going through this recovery process, all of us, and we're getting a lot of tools and information, and we're hearing from the Doug Weisses and the Ted Roberts, we need to figure out why you did this, what your addiction was, what caused it, and why you medicated this way. But the bottom line is, it's not about you. It's about us, right? And you got to be incredulous about that. This is personal. Why do you medicate by drinking? Why do you medicate by gambling? Why do you, so many other resources for escaping? Why this personal thing? And so it sounds like a bunch of psychobabble. It just sounds like a convenient excuse for you guys if you let it off the hook, and you guys aren't off the hook. How do you transition from that into that concept that it's not about you, what we did?
Wow. No, that's a good question, because right away a lot of us think that I'm not enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'll never be. So it's kind of helping her find her worth in God, and surrounding her with other women and in the groups. I don't know if your wife goes into, is she in groups or anything?
No, just therapy.
Therapy, okay. Well, that's great, because they can help her find who she is and help her understand that there's nothing she could have done. She didn't cause it, she can't control it, she can't cure it, but she has to hear that more than once. That's something that it's not, some people can, some women are just, hey, they can just walk away. I know it's not me. You do your thing, or I'm out. But a lot of us, I'll speak for myself, it took me back. It opened up wounds, kind of like little traumas that I didn't know I had that kept building up. So the groups help, the workbooks help, talking about your story with other women, because other people, they don't get it unless they walk this journey. I think everybody can understand and agree to that one. So for her to share her story and other people share theirs, she's going to learn both ways. Gosh, yeah, I could go on about that one.
Yeah, I would totally, the whole, I can't cure it, can't control, can't change it. I think if she can, again, it's always going to be great if she can get around other women. Because I just remember when our story first blew up, I had no clue about addiction. Obviously, our story blew up in like 2000, so sex addiction wasn't even really a terminology that was being used at that time. And in my naivety and stupidity, I will say, I remember when everything came out, I told my husband, I was like, why couldn't you pick food? I would love you at 400 pounds. And what I was saying was food or even alcohol, like it wouldn't impact me the way sexual addiction impacted me. I mean, sexual addiction cuts to the core of how a woman was created in God, uniquely to love and come alongside her man. So it just went, it's almost like it went in and just spread, like a bullet. And I just remember thinking, and I remember my husband going, addiction is not like, I just pick it off, I go to the grocery store and I pick it up off the shelf. But that was kind of, my thought. But as I learned, obviously, then I think all of us women, we women, go through the phase of, is it my fault? If I had sex more, if I had done this more, if I had done that. And then the more that we're in this, we realize I can't be responsible for the decisions of another person. And I think for me, the big shift was if my husband had married X, like another person, that would be her story. And that was a real place where I could go from things being so subjective to pulling back and being a little bit more objective. Because when we can get objective about it, then we can really enter into our own recovery. But if it stays so personal, and it will always be personal for quite a while, but when she can hear things like, I'm not responsible for the decisions of another person, it's not your fault, you can't control it, change it, cure it, then she can begin to move into that place of objectivity where she can step into her own process. So.
One of the things I try to tell my women, because right away they think it's because, it's the woman on the beach that the guys are looking at, or, he saw this on the computer and it was this woman, is that, not to just objectify. We're objectifying that woman if we're just looking at what they look like. Because it could be any woman that they're having, they're talking to or having an affair with or whatever. It's what they're working on, what they're struggling with, and if it's your self-worth or whatever, something from your past that you're working on that's triggering you to go back. It could be stress. I mean, I know Brian has told me, it used to be a stressful day that could even trigger him back. So, trying to get the women to understand that it's not, the 3 C's are definitely it, but, to realize it's also not necessarily the woman that's sitting on the beach. I'm not saying that that's not a trigger, but it's not necessarily what took somebody back, and to help the women to realize your worth in God and who God says you are. I mean, that was my biggest thing that I had to work on previously before Brian was, I had to find that worth. And that's why I think when he told me about it, it wasn't going to take me down because God gave me that worth. And so if she can find her worth in God, who God says she is, and not who another man says, and not even you, unfortunately, I know it sounds terrible, but her worth is not in you. Her worth is in who God says he is. And whether you're there or not, she needs to find that worth in God. And that's where that's what I try with my women, trying to get them to realize who their worth is. We can go through this whole book, but if you don't find your worth in who God says you are, that book isn't really worth anything.
Thank you. So from my perspective, from a man's perspective, how do we lean into, how do I lean into that struggle authentically?
So I think coming under her, I think you said that earlier, coming under her and building her up also helps. I think that's a big thing for men. I mean, we want to come alongside, but really we need to be built up. I mean, it's not like you have to sit there and say you're pretty all the time. It's just building her up in her worth. It doesn't matter what somebody looks like. I don't look at somebody how they, what their looks like. It's more what their work, who God says they are, and building her up, not just coming alongside, but building her up. Just me.
One other thing that I think could be really helpful in this process, and I realize that you're both going to always be on an individual path, but I feel like it could really be helpful when you can get to that coupleship piece and do some of that work together. I know Courageous Love, Stephanie Carnes just put out that book, and there's other books that you can do together to where you are affirming her and you are loving her well, sometimes by just sitting and holding space for her. And that coupleship work could be a part of that. And I realize that, both of you need an individual track before that couple piece happens. But I would just also say that I think what's really important for you men to do, because many times when you hear your wife's pain, it can naturally take you to a place of shame, right? And shame is what we know fuels everything. And so just from my own perspective of working with men and women, that ongoing, it's almost like, here's an example. So I know rejection is a button for me, okay? So when my kids are coming home from middle school or high school and they've got a conflict problem, they've got a fight with whatever, there were times where I had to say, give me a minute. I'd slip into the bathroom, preach the gospel to myself, remember who I am in Christ. Otherwise, I'm going to be Mama Bear handling that situation instead of, how does that make you feel? Like, what do you need right now? You see what I'm saying? So I can see that for you men as you're stepping into these spaces with your wives. Like, you're going to need to possibly pause, preach the gospel to yourself. Those internal boundaries and external boundaries are going to be important. And the internal is, I know who I am in Christ. I'm a beloved son. I've done some things that have really hurt my wife, but doing some of that internal work and then stepping into that space with her. Because if not, like I know my pastor used to talk about like Teflon, you've got Teflon on, so when those arrows of shame hit, they just slide off. That's that internal work. Whereas if we don't have some of that work going on and we hear all the pain of our wives, then it can hit that shame, and then you could find yourself gaslighting, defending, whatever. So I would just say that's going to be some ongoing work that I think in the coupleship is going to be really, really important. Just as when y'all share your pain with her, she needs to sit and listen to that and not be like, well, whatever. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, so I could ask a really short question or have a lot of context to it. But basically, what can we do if we feel like we're losing our lives? I have stabbed my wife in the back many times with my actions. My wife has been was sexually abused in high school. She's told me the things I've done is worse than what she had gone through in high school. And I feel like I'm losing my wife. We're in separate beds right now. It's probably going to be like that way for a while. She told me she recently may have I don't know if she did, but she's basically made threats that she's looking to other men. So what, I don't know. I mean, all I know is I take life one day at a time, and I need to do what I need to do to get healthy for a day in and day out. But what, if we feel like we're losing our lives, is there anything we can do?
The next right thing, and that is not everything in you wants to go say the right thing, do the right thing, whatever, to try to pull her back in. And I would just say, do the next right thing. It may be she moves out of the house. It may be that she starts acting out, and it's going to crush you. It really will crush you. But I know one of the things that Trey say all the time, like, if you change anything that you are doing one iota because of what she is or is not doing, you've got to ask yourself why. So, and I know Michele says this, I said it, do the next right thing. Words are probably going to mean very, very little. So you're going to want to give her lots of words because that may even calm you down a little bit. I would say, trust is always built over time, and your actions are going to speak super, super loud. So you're going to want to but it could be that you just say, I love you and I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And she may be like, whatever. I love you and I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And then you go to your meeting, you call your guys, and you just stay at it. And I know it's terrifying, so I want to validate that.
Yeah, and own it. Even if she does step out, which we hope and pray she doesn't, don't throw that in her face. She'll have to live with that guilt and that shame and deal with that herself. And that's another whole set of trauma that she may end up causing herself. But own it. So when you get triggered or when something happens in a conversation, honey, I caused this. What can I do for you right now? I know this is because of me. The more you can get under her and try to lift her up and do the disclosure, do the polygraphs, do your calls, do whatever you know that you have to do to help her feel safe and that she is protected by you, no matter what cost. And that's where I say it's leave a job, leave the home, leave the state, whatever you guys have to do. Sometimes just starting over. Yeah, it could start over there too, but hopefully you're having a change of heart. When she sees that change of heart and sees it in your eyes, see the way you carry yourself, stand up tall, shoulders back, big heart. There's nothing more important than her and your children. And she feels that. There's a fragrance to a man that wants to protect his wife. She smells it and she feels it and she sinks into that. She embraces that. It's going to be a hard journey where you're at. But keep doing the next right thing. She, with help and prayer, the next right thing will get you where you need to go.
Can I chime in? I'm not the panel, but I got to chime in. Do the next right thing. Create the best version of yourself that you can be. And like Michele said, she never expected me to continue this journey. She thought I would quit. And I kept telling her, I don't care what you do. I don't care what happens. I'm never quitting. I'm never giving up on our marriage, no matter what. And just creating that best version of you, doing what you say you're going to do. Be the man that God designed you to be. That's all you can do. The rest is taken out of your hands because of your actions. You just got to create the best version of yourself and be there and underneath it. So.
You did just that.
We, getting into my story, but I was out of the bedroom for 5 years. And it was just last year when she invited me back. And I was impatient at times, and it was starting, but it almost got to a point where I was almost indifferent for those 5 years. But what was it? A year and a half ago, she came to me and said, "It's time." And I didn't show my frustration. I may have shared it with the guys in groups, but never once was I trying to convey to her, I need to be back in that bedroom. I waited for her time. And when her time came and she came to me with those rings and said, "I'm ready," dude, I was bawling like a baby. And it was unbelievable. I was so shocked. And we did our ceremony last year, and it's just been an awesome journey. So keep doing it.
And there's no time limit for her. Just like he said, 5 years. Him and I both didn't know if that day would ever come. I didn't know. He didn't know. So every wife is different. Every marriage is different. So if you can just throw the clock away. Just do what you need to do. Focus on you as a couple. Don't compare your story to anybody else's. Don't compare her or him or anybody. It's you and her in this world together with God. And just be patient.
I think one of the things that Tom mentioned that's important, y'all are not inhuman if you're frustrated, okay? Like he said, I was frustrated at times. She may have not needed to hear that frustration, but he had a space and a place with other men to go with that. So, if we're saying don't be angry or whatever, now we're going back into y'all numbing again. So y'all are going to be frustrated with her from time to time. Y'all are going to be possibly indifferent from time to time. So run to your men and have a safe space for y'all to do that. Because again, nobody knows what our timetables are like as far as healing, right? We're all on a different track and a different path. Some women may take 5 years, some women may take 10 years, some may take 1 year, but just as long as you continue to do the right thing, the hope would be that restoration and reconciliation can take place.
Good. I'm not
My wife says honesty with her means I should be able to share anything I share with my group guys with you. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question.
Trudy?
Yes, I get it. I honestly think whatever she's asking for is what you need to be honest with. You know, if she's asking for a whole honesty, you need to be all honest with her. I mean, that's just what I try to, you know, tell everybody, that if that's what she's asking for, that's what she wants. So, you know, you need to be as honest with her as she's asking. You know, some women want every detail. Some women don't want every detail. You know, it all depends on what she needs. It's what she needs that you know. And I'm just going to piggyback off of this a little bit, but the timetable, everybody does have different timetables, and some women want it, even say they want it, but at the same time, they don't see their husbands working on it. So it's, even though they, you know, they want it just as much, but sometimes they don't see the work. So if they're not getting the work, they're not getting it. But that's just my thing when it comes to what they're asking for. If it's what she's asking for, that's just my thing. But if she's asking for it, that's what she wants.
I do, and I hope she gets educated as far as a couple, because wanting to know everything can over and over can be really hurtful. So she can understand, like, okay, if it's this, like, if it's the same stuff, like, I don't know, if you looked at something and you're just wrong in the groups or something like that, maybe you can tell the guys, and then you can go over that with her in a weekly check-in that you guys do. But also the details of anything too much, she has to understand she'll never forget it. I know way too much than I care to. But at that time, I wanted to know everything. Then when I got everything on the Pandora's box on the computer, everything's right here. So if somebody can help her understand that other than you, you know, that would be a big help for her. Because I get where she's at. We all do. We all want to know everything, because what we don't know is what we fear. And then our mind makes things worse than what the truth is. But you have to be careful of what you know and when and how.
Yeah, I have a little bit different take on this. So what's really, really important is that you both have your communities. She's got her female community, and I would say, like, I have my recovery group community that I go to, and then I have a small group that's kind of like my holy of holies, you know, and then my spouse. And so I'm going to, you know, check in whatever with my large group, then I'm going to go super deep with my small group, okay? That could be where I go process pain, where I go process a situation with my spouse, mistrust, you know, things like that. And then I'm going to take a lot of that feedback. I'm going to pray about that. I've got a mentor in my life. I'm going to go talk to her about that. And then I'm going to come back to my spouse and unpack some things. So you see, my spouse may not be the first person that I go with all that, but I do think the honesty piece is really, really important. So let's say y'all had a fight and you are experiencing some indifference with her and you're really angry. You're going to want to go process that outside of her, and then maybe bring back some things to her about that. So you're still being really, really honest. Like, I know some couples have that 48-hour rule, 24 to 48-hour rule, where you need to, you know, share with her. But I definitely, I'm a big believer in you going to her, but I'm kind of like y'all, like, details, you know, that's one thing I always tell women. I'm like, you don't want to know all the details. Like, full disclosure, absolutely. But you can't undo some of the details. But I do think maybe the better question would be, why do you want to know all that you know? You know, is she looking for honesty from you? Because that is so, so important. When the lying and the hiding and all that starts happening, she's going to probably start pulling for more and more. No, I need more. I know I need more. So maybe some questions back to her might be, what are you really needing from me? And do you feel safe in this relationship? And do you feel like I'm withholding from you? Blah, blah, blah. You know, maybe get curious about maybe the heartbeat behind the motivation, why she's asking you those things.
As someone who, because of how I was raised, does not have overly empathetic bone in my body, and I've heard that almost every author you said was a female. Would it be better for me to read books on empathy written by a woman as opposed to the one that I have by Dr. Douglas? I'm just curious because it's really, really difficult for me to be empathetic. So I'm trying to gain that.
Well, I guess one question, are you actually practicing what you're reading?
Yeah, trying to.
You know, on a regular basis, because that's where, yeah, you have to, that's where a lot, it's a daily thing, doing the right thing every moment. You know, as far as the books, maybe you guys can answer better, but it's, you know, it's really practicing it, going out of your comfort zone. Because if you're not used to that, you didn't grow up with that, you know, it is going to be hard work. It is going to take you at an uncomfortable place. But for me, yeah, doing your homework every day, asking her again what you can do to help her, going to lean in, even look back at yourself and take notes for yourself and journal. And it's like, wow, how did I lean into my wife today? How did I love my wife today? How did I affirm my wife today? How did I praise my wife today? You know, was I too busy? Actually take a time schedule and like, how much time did I actually spend with her today? You know, did we actually date? Did we actually talk? Wow, I didn't even ask her how her day was. I didn't even say good morning. I didn't even say good night. You know, these are the little things that really add up, and they add in more things. But as far as the books, you guys can answer that.
I think the more stories that you can hear, obviously, the more empathy you can have as well. And I know hearing stories, I would be talking about females, so that could be, you know, you listen to some testimonials on YouTube. I know Doug Weiss has a lot of things. You know, empathy work could be not just in sexual addiction. Empathy work could be going and serving in a soup kitchen, or, you know, lots of different things. That just really diving into the stories of other people could be really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have it. What did you say? Brene Brown has a video, empathy versus sympathy.
You have to show that.
I'll show it.
So for one thing, Brian used to always say that he didn't have any empathy. He used to always say, you know, I don't have any empathy. And as he's worked with other guys and even hearing other women, but hearing guys' stories, that has also helped him to build up his empathy. And he doesn't think he has it. I think he's always had it, but he didn't think he had it. But so yeah, and I definitely agree. The more you work on it, and working on it with her is definitely, you know, you have to find out what she feels is empathy too. You know, everybody sees it differently. You know, so talking with her, communication is a big thing in every marriage. And so if you don't have that communication, you need to find out how it will feel for her. You can think you're doing all the empathy you want, but if it's not how she's receiving it, it's not meaning anything. So get that communication with her to how she receives the empathy and how it means something to her.
Rich shared something yesterday. I don't know if this would be part of empathy or not. How you took a group of, was it pastors? Through the trail and beyond?
I took them through the trail and beyond.
That's good.
And I think it's important. Oh yeah, I think it's important for guys to get the female perspective. So if I read a book on empathy from a male perspective of how the female is going to react, I'm probably not going to learn as much unless I actually go through and hear from a female that has gone through it, because I think it's just a connection there, because I may be super smart and have the education on empathy, but if I'm not listening to a female that can talk about it directly to me, or take pastors through it. These pastors I took through were like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this earlier. I wish I knew how my wife felt. So it's very important, I think, to have a female perspective on it. I mean, when I tell guys, I said, you need to find books written by females on this so you can understand the process.
I actually advise my women to, when they're going through the betrayal, if they feel comfortable, they have to feel safe in doing it. But if they feel comfortable, when I do some of my homework, I go, you know, I'll share it with Brian, And I've done the same thing with told the women, if they feel comfortable, share this with your husband. Share some of what your answers are and how you felt when you went through it. You know, it's good for them to understand. Ryan even went through it when I would do it, so I had to do mine when I did my betrayal. I did an X for my ex and how he betrayed me and how Brian had betrayed me. And so he would understand why some of my feelings would come up with different things, because some of it wasn't all him, but it was past. So I had to, you know, point that out, but it helped him to realize and get empathy to what I was feeling when he was doing some of those things that could trigger things from the past.
One thing toward that, empathy is strength. Lack of empathy is weakness. And it really sucks to go through the process to understand how childish we are until that starts to develop. And empathy is not something that any of the men here were born with. It's something that we have to process and grow and figure out as we go. But yeah, I was never a crier, and now I cry at the drop of a hat. So
yeah, and empathy is not sympathy. It's not the same. It is not the same. So seeing the difference of that too.
One thing that I think could be helpful at some point of your journey with your spouse, and I would recommend this either with like a Tom and Michelle or a counselor, is four actual letters of impact. So when we work with a couple, the wife writes her letter of impact on how your sex addiction has impacted her, sexually, physically, emotionally, financially, blah, blah, blah. Then I have her write a letter of empathy toward the spouse. So how your sex addiction has impacted you. So like, for instance, it would be something like, I can't imagine what it was like when you were 8 years old and you saw your father's pornography stash. I can't imagine what that may have been like for you to not have space as an 8-year-old to know what to do with that, you know. And so she can then write a letter to you on how that changed the trajectory of your life. And that's going to be very meaningful for you to hear from her. Okay, so those would be the 2 letters that she does. And then the 2 letters that you would do would be, you would now try to put yourself in her shoes and begin to write a letter of impact to her on how your sexual addiction has impacted her. And again, this is not this beautiful, eloquent, but just the best you can try to begin to identify with how that has impacted her. And then the last letter for you guys is to write a letter, your adult self to your child self, of everything that you wish that you could have heard. So like, what would Big John want to say to Little John? To console him, to comfort him, to care for him. And when y'all read those letters to one another, again, I would suggest a couple or a counselor. That's some real beautiful work of your coupleship recovery that will really, I think, break through some barriers and really create some intimacy that you want for one another.
And also, I love those letters too. And another letter you could always write to try to have empathy for your wife is, what would Jesus be saying to your wife? And write that letter from you. What's Jesus telling you that Jesus would say to your wife about who she is? And also you can do one on yourself. What would Jesus be saying to you about you? And then also there's a validating disclosure that if you've done the disclosure already, is that you would actually, it's 5-year increments, but you would look at like a feelings list, pick out all kinds of different feelings, and in 5-year increments, had your wife known, I don't know, that you were cheating on her while she was in labor, while having a baby, what would she have been feeling had she known? Because you can never be there, but you can do the best you can to put the feelings into that, and then you do that for the whole time you've known her, and that helps you pull out feelings. You're trying to get there, you're trying to understand, and then you share that again with us or a couple or a therapist or something like that. But really know who you are in God and get that out. What would Jesus be saying? And then validating.
Good segue into this question. What is the one thing, the most important thing, that you want your spouse to receive from God?
I think just the identity piece. You know, I think that's the path for all of us, right? I'm either gonna live knowing that I know Zephaniah 3:17 that He is singing a unique melody over me. I have earned the Father's smile not because of anything I've done, but because of the finished work of the Father, and therefore I walk in obedience after that. The dangerous place for that for us and for y'all is that we sit in the smile. Okay? We have earned the Father's smile, and therefore we do. The old me, pre-recovery, I did to earn the Father's smile, right? Or I've got to clean up and do all the things to be in the right position with Him. So if I can wake up before my feet hit the floor every day, I try to remember who I am, whose I am, and I'm walking out of already receiving the smile. And I'm walking in obedience out of that. Otherwise, I'm going to start hustling. I'm going to start hustling for love. I'm going to start hustling for approval. I'm going to start hustling to be whatever, okay? And so I think that's the same for them. And again, that's another place that y'all can meet each other, you know, in your coupleship. It's just that reminder of who I am and whose I am in Christ.
Yeah, and that makes me think of when we watched the couples with the Pure Desire Summit with the couples group just this week. It was Jenna Rice-Mercer. I always say it right. Rice-Mercer, but you know, who remembers mine? Okay. But I'm a picture person and visual, so I had to think of those 10 for the people that saw that. The people who didn't, you need to, because it was 10 chairs. And, you know, think of 10 gifts that God gave you, you know, and put them on little note cards and put them in front of you, you know. I'm accepted, I'm loved, I'm gifted, maybe you're a great speaker or whatever, and a great friend, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, those napkins come over top and they cover up. We allow them to cover up those wonderful things. They don't disappear. They're still there because God is always in us, but they're just covered up by the trauma. So if you can just think about who that is, who you were born, you didn't lose that. This, whatever happened to you to go into this addiction, it's just those napkins over top. But the core of you, you are loved. You are a son of God.
I can't add to it because you guys have such great ideas with that. I think it's great. But I do agree. You are a son of God, and just like we are, you know, we say we're princesses of the king, but you guys are also prince of the king. So remember that. But I think that's really great how you say that. That's neat.
One more written one. It's a long one. If your wife has post-trauma sexual that she has disclosed with you, but she feels like she has put it behind her and doesn't really ever bring it up, how, as a husband, should you navigate that with respect to her healing if she doesn't really recognize it as a trauma and hasn't ever sought out any form of help about it? Can you actually have worked through it on her own? Could she have actually worked through it on her own?
I've got to run to the bathroom, but yes.
Okay, so it's we're almost done.
My short answer is no. You can't do your work by yourself. I'm sorry. I mean, we know that addiction, where does addiction happen? In isolation, right? And so we can't do work by ourselves. We can't. And so that's the short answer. She needs, I mean, again, we can't change somebody, fix somebody, but I would highly recommend her getting to some help because it's going to affect every area of her life. We know, right? Our pain impacts every area of our life, our relationships, our sexuality, our identity, our everything. And so it's going to be the same for her. And so that's going to affect y'all's relationship, y'all's physical relationship, every relationship. And so I would just, now again, it may be that you bring it up every so often, just, hey, I've left it. Maybe you go into couples, maybe you start with couples counseling, which is not what I recommend. I recommend individual counseling first and then couples, but it could be that you love her well and make an appointment that maybe y'all can talk about this in a safe space. Maybe she needs that safe space to talk about it, but that maybe that you have to wait a couple years before she's ready, and that's going to stink and it's going to impact you. But in the midst of that, you can continue to do the work. And it may be that empathy is some places that you just love her well in until she's ready to pick up that baton and run with it.
That was my suggestion, just to love on her through it, because just like it took you how long until you came out with your addiction, it might just take her that long until she comes out with what has been hurting her too. So, just love on her through it, because we all have our own different timetable, even though we might want to fix, just like we want to fix you guys, and you guys want to fix us, it's just loving her in that moment, and until she realizes that she needs to get through it.
And one other thing that came to mind is when this came out with us, it's always like, okay, what money do we have? We got to put into his recovery, not mine, that I wasn't worth it. So sometimes we feel like we don't want to take any money. There's no more money at home in the budget for my help. So she's not doing that. So she puts herself last, and she's afraid to even ask you, maybe you need to cut something out of the budget for her to get help. But she's not going to say that. So maybe if you could just say, what do you need? Whatever you need, we're going to afford it. We're going to walk through this. So I know that's a big one for women, because we're like, okay, we need to get you fixed. Whatever you need, go to the counselor, go here, go there. And all the money's going to be poured into you, and she's dying at home because there's not enough money for both recoveries and putting food on the table. So that's another thing, because she does need help. She cannot walk this alone.
One text I got says, what would you say to guys who are concerned about starting a relationship because they don't want to have a woman enter their mess? I guess about taking this into the relationship.
Can you read that again for me?
What would you say to guys who are concerned about starting a relationship because they don't want to have a woman enter their mess? They want to take their addiction into a
That's from a single guy, probably.
Right, okay, right.
Well, for me, do your work, start recovery, because everybody's a sinner. So you're all going to bring something into the relationship. So if you have some kind of sobriety and a plan, and you've been doing something, and she can see you're proactive, and when help her learn about this, help her learn about the brain, help her learn all there is about this addiction and how you're going to fight it, and your plan going ahead, and because things are going to come out. I mean, all I can say is you're both saying she's going to bring stuff in that you don't know about, but at least be honest about it, and open, and say, hey, this maybe not the first date, but but eventually be proactive and don't hide it until you're married, and then all of a sudden, here, honey. But yeah, I mean, be open, honest, truthful, and keep doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Don't carry that shame into
Right.
that relationship.
Right.
Don't hesitate to go out on a date because you feel the shame that you have this secret down there. It's who you were. It's not who you are now.
Well, what if you're still struggling? I mean, so a lot of guys, single guys, college, even high school, are going to have this struggle. This is going to be part of their lives. So, I hear what you're saying about not telling them on the first date, but at what point do you tell them and express to them that this is a part of the struggle that you go through on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to college girls groups and youth groups, I tell the girls to, by their third date, they need to ask their guy, not if they are struggling, but when is the last time you looked at porn? That's what I ask them to tell them. So it's already a conversation that we're having, because even with parents, it's when they bump into it, okay? You don't wake up one day and say, oh, today's done with it, I'm gonna look at porn, but they will bump into it at some point. So I tell girls to have that conversation by the third date. And I mean, I've got 2 girls and 2 boys, and so I'm very prepared for them to possibly be dating somebody that has struggled with pornography. And again, what I tell young girls is, the guy who says he doesn't have a problem and he doesn't struggle and it's no big deal and all men do this, I say, run, Forrest, run. Okay, the guy who says, I've looked at pornography, it's been a part of my past. I've got men in place in my life. I've got covenant eyes on my phone. I've got a small group that I talk to. I say, absolutely. That is somebody that you can enter in with. It really is. But the guy who, is making excuses and all that, that's not a guy. He's already showing dishonesty. So that would not be somebody. So now again, if you are looking to date a woman and you are really in some deep waters with your struggle, I would say I would probably put a pause on dating somebody. Maybe get that under some sense of control, or at least have a nice plan in place before you're doing that. Because you want to make sure that you are, you want to make sure that you are as much of Mr. Right as possible. She's not looking for perfection, but just that is somewhat under, just like if a girl was struggling with an eating disorder, she would want to have that, working itself out, at least in a process before maybe stepping into a relationship.
People in relationships, we tell them polygraphs. Continued polygraphs, even to prove to yourself, wow, I'm clean 3 months. And, all of a sudden you want to tell her about this and say, yeah, but I have a polygraph to prove I haven't acted out. And I'm doing what I need to do, all the things that Melody said. So that's another way to help her feel safe.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you all said with it, because I'm talking like you all. I don't usually say that, but it's a couple hours with you. Definitely, I think if you're not in the right place to be telling them, you should continue the relationship. You should put it on pause. But I do believe it's also something to be told in the beginning of the relationship. I think back to our relationship and all the red flags that I should have had there. I should have ran. I should have been like Forrest. I should have been going out there. But I also am thankful that I am here now. So I'm not saying that. But, they're going to also see a lot of the signs with it. It's also, it's there. But, I am 100% believe that everybody struggles with something. It doesn't matter. We've all got it. We've all got things in our childhood. And then the more honest you are with her, the more it's out there and what you're working on. Because it doesn't mean anything if you're not working on it. If you just say you have this addiction, it doesn't mean anything if you're not working on it. So, the proof is in the pudding if you're really working on it and being truthful with it. So.
I was just going to say one other thing, just kind of in the same vein as we're talking about this. I don't know, and I'm not going to speak for y'all, so I will just say this for myself. I don't struggle with the sexual addiction part, because we all have something that we struggle. We all have something that we run to for rescue, right? When we're not believing that God is going to show up for us. I think the struggle that so many of we women have is the lying and the deception and the lack of transparency, because we can't get past, was he still telling the truth? Is he where he says he's going to be? So again, it's not struggling with addiction. It's so many women that I have sat with said, it's the lies. It's the deception that's so much more hurtful than the sexual acting out or the pornography or whatever. And so that is what is so difficult, and why marriages end is because of the deception and the lies, not the sexual addiction piece. Because we all, in essence, we all are somewhat addicts running to something like Eve did. God's not going to show up. I'm going to take the apple, right? He's holding out on me. I'm going to make life work for myself. Some of our sins are more socially acceptable than others, but we all run to rescue for something. But it's the lying and the deception, the lack of transparency that is so problematic. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Definitely agree. Just from working with women that I have, same thing. It's the lies. If they would if their husband would just tell them the truth on things, or even just come to them without them having to ask. It makes such a difference for you to come to us and tell us, than us have to ask every night. So what did you do? So what did you do? So what, so you know, it just makes a difference if when you come and you're being truthful in it compared to, you know, us having to search for it. So lies are definitely a big thing. And what, you know, makes such a difference when you come and truthfully tell us something, then for you to cover it up and we find out about it 48 hours, two weeks later or whatever, that just rips open a scar all over again compared to you just coming and telling us what's happened.
So for someone who's single and is serious in a relationship with a young lady, how much is appropriate to share with her at this serious stage so that she knows what she's getting into and that she knows about me? And also, is there an appropriate time? Like, I know you mentioned third date, it probably won't be wise to load, I guess, everything at that time, but how much is appropriate to share, and also what time frame to share that?
Tell what you do.
This may sound counterintuitive because you're pursuing a young lady, you know, a woman. I think everything is important to share. I think you're going to know when it's time. I mean, if you say the word serious, that's more than just dating, more than likely. In my book, that would be what that would look like. If you're serious, you're moving toward a commitment or already committed, and I think everything needs to come out. I would challenge you with this. I would like this to be I'm totally talking off the top of my head right now. I would like this to be 2 different dates. I would like there to be a date that you have with her where you share it all. And then the next date would be what you tell her that you have in place. And I know that that would be really hard because we would like those to happen simultaneously. I've done da-da-da-da-da-da, but I'm doing da-da-da-da-da-da, right? The tension that you have to sit in your honesty and your integrity with her, I think is such a beautiful thing to let that marinate and let her sit in that without, but I'm going to group and I've got these guys and I'm seeing a counselor. You see what I'm saying? That could be a real beautiful thing for y'all. She might come to you with questions after you share all that at a later time. And then I think you can let her know what guardrails that you have for yourself, for your future relationship with a woman. Honesty, integrity, polygraphs, guys, all the things. But there's something about those happening simultaneously doesn't really allow her to sit in the magnitude of whatever it is that you're sharing. That's just my thought.
I think too, it's good to have a contact for her, whether anybody on here, anybody else that you know, because she's going to be like, well, what do I do with this? Well, who do I talk to? So I don't want her to have to feel lost. So if you would have some women's numbers and contacts, you know, coaches, care therapists, you know, somebody that has walked this journey that, hey, you know, if you have any questions and you don't want to know how to ask me or want to know more, this lady's walked this journey and she knows that you might be calling, and that's okay. You know, and then maybe if you want, maybe we can meet with her and her husband, or we can meet together so you might have questions maybe they can answer because they've walked this and they've made it. So just that she might, because I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'd be going home like, what am I into? What is this guy doing? You know, but the thing is, and nowadays, Melody said it earlier, so many people are involved in this. They're just not talking about it. So, you know, she may be, you know, it may be her brother, it may be her sister, it may be her family, her mom, dad, whatever. So it's just kind of like, wow, she's facing this, but she doesn't have to face it alone. And a lot of people, she might think, oh my gosh, I can't go to my friends because they're going to tell me to leave them and I don't want to leave them. Who do I talk to? And that's, you know, to think to wait any length of time, but to, even a day could be just overwhelming for her and really, really scary. So if you could just give her, hey, I have some people here, and it's okay. Maybe even have their websites and say, hey, this is who they are, have a YouTube or somewhere you have that she can feel some kind of relation to them, or that you talk to them or whatever, and say, it's okay, we're gonna be all right, and you can ask any questions you want.
I was gonna say the suggestion of even another couple coming alongside of you. If you have another couple that would, be able to walk alongside of you with it, that you're in a group with, and there's a couple, whether it's a leader or somebody who could come, walk alongside with, but definitely a woman. Not to push out a guy, but I think that way she has somebody she can contact, because it's so hard I know for me, I've reached out. If I don't reach out to some women, they never reach out to me because they're so embarrassed and so ashamed of things that, they won't reach out first. So usually I've had some guys ask me to reach out to their wives, or I've had, a pastor come to me and ask me, can you please reach out to this wife because she's dealing with it, but she doesn't want to reach out. It's just really hard for them sometimes to reach out first. So, have somebody there for her right away to reach out to, or that they can reach out to her, that way she's not feeling like, the embarrassment or the shame from it, to reach out first.
Mike? Yes, most of the questions have been essay questions, but how do you mesh the intimacy and anorexia from your woman's perspective, how a man can do better to mesh those two together to help with the healing?
What do you mean by mesh them?
How do you work them together so that your relationship is building and healing when you're working both of those together, from your perspective?
From the intimacy anorexia coming forward, I think when I think of intimacy, everybody thinks of intimacy as sexual, but it also is, relational. So I know for us, our relational is so much better than even sexual. So, I mean, when I see intimacy, remember intimacy isn't only sexual. So working your intimacy all around, and, it doesn't have to just, it has to be your intimacy with each other, relational makes such a difference compared to even, so that's what the first thing to work on is relational intimacy more than even sexual intimacy.
Yeah, I don't mean the question from sexual, I meant from
Okay.
I'm kind of a big believer in abstinence contracts within marriage, and that doesn't necessarily even mean when you've acted out. I think a sex fast for a small season can be a really beautiful reset for a couple. And when we think of the word fast, remember we're taking something off the plate to then layer in things onto the plate. And so what that could look like, let's say you said, hey, I really want to be more spiritually intimate with you, emotionally intimate with you, and physically intimate with you without the sexual. You could enter into a small season, and I think if you guys initiated that would be pretty mind-blowing to your wives, but that we're taking this off for, let's say 2 weeks or a month, but we're layering in things. Let's say maybe you start praying together and doing Bible study. We've had couples that started dance classes together. That's something physical that they get to do together, working out together, or something physical that they get to do together and enjoy one another without the sexual, okay? And again, this is just if you feel like you need a reset for some of that maybe sex is the first thing that y'all go to instead of all these other areas. Then out of that abstinence contract, I think what could be really helpful is lots of different physical touch moments throughout the course of a week. So like say you have, and I'm a big believer in sexual intimacy, but also non-sexual touch, like taking showers together and talking about your day with no sex in the shower. I think that it can be such an emotional, intimate time with you and your partner. You see each other, you're talking about your day. Maybe she's had a crazy day with the kids and you're talking about that. Remember, kids have been hanging on her and pulling on her all day long. So a non-sexual shower can be a beautiful thing where y'all see each other and you really enjoy each other. I think non-sexual massages can be really great, where you light candles and you give each other massages, but it doesn't lead to something. Because remember, as you're trying to reconnect with her, this and this usually always equals this. If I have a shower with him, it's going to lead to sex. If I have a massage with him, it's going to lead to sex. So having that layered non-sexual time with one another where you're connecting and seeing each other and enjoying each other, I promise you the sexual times after those non-sexual times will be so much better because of the investment that you're taking time in outside of all the other things. And that can really be beautiful. So I'm a big believer in a lot of non-sexual opportunities for you guys as couples that will really make the sexual piece a beautiful piece.
Cyrus? Oh, I'm sorry. What was Cyrus saying?
Can I follow up to that? So say relational intimacy and emotional stuff is really good. The bedroom is like awkward. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you have advice from the female perspective on that?
Okay, so like if y'all had a massage, that would be in the bedroom. So it could be that the bedroom's just an awkward place right now. So I would encourage things to take place, even non-sexually, in the bedroom. Like what if y'all gave each other massages at night in the bedroom and you said, let's make this non-sexual tonight. And she sees that you see her, you're touching her. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get excited, right? That could be very normal. You could get, I don't know how this, you could get a hard on in the shower, okay? You could get a hard on in the bed when you're giving her a massage, but you're wanting to honor that. This is non-sexual time to each other. I mean, like, you love her, she's beautiful to you and all the things, so don't let that be a trigger for her. Like, I'm turned on, but I want to stay non-sexual with you tonight or whatever. And that, I think that not only builds intimacy, it really builds trust and safety for her. So that she sees that you're wanting her without it having to lead to sex. Because isn't that what we all want? We all want love and connection and longing for one another. But we also love the sex too, but we don't always want to feel like, if I do this, then this is going to be here. So like I said, you can have lots of physical things happening throughout the course of the week. And what I have found is that sometimes the intimacy can be just as great when the sexual thing is not happening because of all the other layers. So would that help?
I get that, but then once sex is happening and it's not as intimate as the other times, because it's still awkward and I don't know how to be that way. I don't know how to be vulnerable, and she doesn't know how to be vulnerable when it comes to actually the making of love.
Right. You know? I hear that, but I want to challenge you. If you can come up with some creative ways of non-sexual time together, I almost want to guarantee it. I'm not going to give you a guarantee, but I really almost want to guarantee that you will get there. And even in the awkwardness sometimes, just say, man, this feels really awkward. I mean, like, that's honest. This feels really awkward right now. I feel like this is kind of mechanical. Like, how can we make this better? Maybe you turn some music on or light some candles or, things like that. I think the more that you can enter in with the place of curiosity, and we're learning and we're growing and fumbling through this, then I've got to get this perfect and I've got to last 4 hours and whatever that looks like. Like, she's going to appreciate the awkwardness, right? Of like, I really want to make this work with us. And I really want to, hey, if you came up with some ideas of non-sexual time together in the shower or in the bed, I really feel like that's going to change the dynamics of your time together in the bed when you are sexual.
Also, I don't know if you've heard of the sexual garden, where you can actually talk about what's okay and what's not okay in the bedroom, that she feels safe, because there may be things that you or her are thinking that I'm not comfortable doing right now. It's not the right time, or she's thinking of something that you might have done. I'll speak from our own things. There's things like, okay, no, I can't go there because I know you've done this, so I can't go there right now. Maybe in time. So if you can actually have that conversation out of the bedroom and say what is safe with you, what is comfortable with you, even the places, the positions, whatever it is that you feel, that you both feel safe and you both agree to it. And then maybe even like, okay, well, how many times a week are you going to do that? That you actually know, okay, well, maybe she wants it 4 times, maybe you want it once. Okay, you can come maybe twice, that you'll agree. And maybe you're going to be the one to, pursue her that time, that one night or this week, or however you guys do that. So make it a playful, fun thing, that it becomes not an obligation, like this is what we're supposed to do because we're married. It's wow, this is what we get to do with each other.
I'm only listening because, you know, you're not the only one who struggles with it. Because it's very common in this, you know, either the woman feels like she's not good enough or the man feels like they, you know, it just has changed once sexual addiction comes into it. It really has changed. So I'm taking my own notes.
Tell the secret.
I just want to add one other thing. I know sometimes, I'm assuming with the women that I've worked with, sometimes sex can be very vulnerable. It can be start and stop, you know, through some of the sexual addiction. And I think if you can kind of expect the awkwardness, expect maybe it not to look beautifully, rhythmically, or whatever like it needs to. Like for instance, I know for me that vulnerability to step into that space was not super hard, but toward the end, after I had given myself to my spouse, that's where it was really scary. So like, that's where sometimes maybe I would cry. So if you can sit in that with your wife, you know, maybe she cries in the middle, maybe she doesn't cry, but like enter in there with her and just maybe that could look like, hey, why don't we stop and pray? You know, and you stop and pray and then you reset, restart, you know, and maybe you have to start all over, whatever that looks like. But as long as you are open, I mean, vulnerability is we don't know what this is going to look like, right? And so, but I'm willing to enter in, and it may be awkward or we may get to stop. And what happens when it stops sometimes, you know, it's like, you know, and then you can get defensive and then you feel exposed and then it can go to Hades in a handbasket before you know it, right? But if I am embracing this vulnerability train and I don't know where it's going to go and where it's going to lead me, but I've got my partner with me and we want to enter into this, and if we both cry or she cries or I cry, but we're willing to just stay in it and go there, y'all, there's some beautiful things that can come out of that. And it's unknown. And I want y'all to remember, yada is used, I think, like 900 times in the Bible. And that's where David talks about to be known. It's also in Genesis where Adam knew Eve. So that knowing, to be known by our Heavenly Father, and then to be known by our spouse, I want to remind you, and I know this might blow your mind a little bit, your Abba Father Daddy is in there with y'all as the sacred covenant act that you get to experience. There is no shame. Like it can be as if it were in the garden. They did not hide. They were not without shame. It was perfect in every way. And so there is some beauty to stepping into that, remembering that He created that. This can be a beautiful thing with the three of y'all. Okay? And so keep the lights on sometimes and look into each other's eyeballs and let the Lord be in that with y'all. And I know that's mind-blowing, but that's really what He gave us to enjoy.
Lights on,
Yeah.
That's, anybody else? Okay, one more quick one.
So question going back to singles and being in a serious relationship. So for me, I mean, you know, it'd be important just sharing just about sexual addiction and the journey and everything. I guess probably one of the fears or concerns for me is sharing and not knowing about her past, and whatever that might be, and hopefully not being invasive or demanding to ask, but really wanting to know so that we both have a very clear picture of what could be, and what we know each of us are getting into. So I guess my question being is like, how would we get to a place so that we both know as much as we can in a very organic way without rushing or be demanding or being invasive?
For me, it's like when you open that door, that's a door eventually you can say, hey, if you have anything, I want to know everything about you too. you know, let's just be real and honest. Let's continue our relationship like this because I'm gonna love you. I know we all make mistakes. I've made them, and hopefully you'll accept me for who I am, and I want to accept who you are and all your mistakes. So we just want to start this relationship out right and continue it until the day we die. You know, it's one step at a time, one moment at a time, but just be open and real and just ask her. I'm here. If she feels safe with you and you just said something like this, you know, if it's a safe place for her, obviously you must feel kind of safe if you're going to say something to her. And if she feels that, just say, hey, it's okay to be real with me too. You know, if you don't have anything like this, it's okay. I'm not asking you, you know, to come up with something or you have to have traumas because of me, or because I'm bringing this. But boy, if you have anything, I want to be here with you and walk through everything with you. And I'm sorry for any pain that you would have went through in your own life. And together we'll do this.
I just wanted to thank you, women, for speaking into my wife's life a couple weeks ago. One of the things that's helped me is understanding my own trauma, what happened to me as a kid. And once I really began to understand that, it's beginning to help me understand her and her pain, because unfortunately we both had brought a lot of trauma in that, for me, I didn't know how to deal with what happened to me as a young kid. I had no way of understanding my parents went to their grave not knowing, you know, both of them did. So for 37 years, I just buried what happened to me. But to finally be opening up about it and being able to share that with other guys has been huge for me. But I got to share it with her. But I was able to go deeper as to how it made me feel. But now it's helping me to understand her and realizing the trauma that I created with my betrayal and what I did to her. So I think that's been really important, is not only understanding my own pain, understanding hers, and that's what's helped me be more empathetic, because I was kind of like him, like I had no empathy initially. It was, let's fix this, let's hurry up, and I walked in purity 90 days, and here I'm, over 5 months, and now it's not about wanting that anymore. It's, for me, the most important thing is I want to see her heal. And to me, that's love.
Yeah.
That's love. I'm going to see her heal.
Beautiful. She wants the same for you.
Yeah, I can recognize that now. Or I did before. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right, guys, I think that's about it. Awesome. The lunch bell's gonna, what? Somebody say something?
I said awesome.
Awesome. Yes. Definitely appreciate the answers and the questions. Very good conversations. Hopefully take something home from it and learn from it. So 12:35, lunch bell probably did ring by now, I don't know. So go ahead to lunch. If you want to talk to the ladies afterwards, you're more welcome to answer or ask them more questions. And then we'll be back here. We have free time after lunch, so we won't be back here till, I think it's 3:45 for James. Look forward to hearing from James. Good.
You're good. You're really good. My brain,